What's up? I've thought about making this video for a couple of days and I've decided just to sit down and make it. So right now, for some perspective for me, I just graduated college in May and I'm doing my second internship. I'm doing an internship instead of a full-time job because I'm doing a one-year master's program, and so I intend to go back to school in the fall. And I'm making this video really not with the intention of anybody watching it, but as sort of a personal diary where I want to document what hopefully ends up being an inflection point and a change in the trajectory of my life. So, given that this is my second internship, I've had decent exposure to what corporate America is like, to what working in a corporate white-collar environment is like, and I've had sufficient exposure to it for me to realize that I just absolutely hate it. I find it so intolerable. And it's not that the work itself is that bad or that the company is bad. In fact, both of those things are pretty good. But I've found the effect that it has on me is very negative. I don't like it for a couple of reasons, and I'm going to elucidate those really quickly. So the first reason, and this is the way I'm explaining my thinking and how I frame it, when you work for a company, what you're essentially doing is you're leasing your time for a fixed amount of money if you're hourly, or you're leasing an approximation of how much time you intend to be present at the office for the salary that you're allocated for that 2-week or month-long period. And so fundamentally, this has a couple of issues. The first of which is that the amount of reward, i.e. money that you get, is bounded. So you could put in 8 hours a day or you could put in 12 hours a day, and the amount of money and output that you get for the work that you put in is bounded by however much that company is willing to pay you. You could be working like crazy and it's not really going to move the needle much as far as your material outcomes. And so in my mind, I differentiate between two things. I differentiate between work and toil. In my mind, work is something where the outcome, whatever end it is that you're working towards, is proportional to the amount of effort you put in. So for example, I did an applied math degree for my undergrad. And so there are many times where I would spend 10, 12 hours a day working and studying and just grinding my ass off because the material and the content was so difficult. And really, I've never had an issue with working hard or with working long hours. But the reason why I was able to motivate myself to work so hard and work these really long hours was because there was a clear correlation between the amount of effort and the amount of work that I was putting in and the quality of the output that I was receiving. So the grades or the education or whatever you want to call it. So I was able very easily to rationalize putting in tremendous amounts of effort for a long period of time, for 4 years, because I was able to see that there was a tangible relationship between me putting in this substantial amount of effort and the output I was getting. However, when you're working at a job, not only is your compensation bounded by what the company is willing to give you, unless you're on a sort of role where you get commission, but also generally, even just outside of your monetary compensation, there is not a proportional reward for putting in a whole bunch more effort. Somebody could work 8 hours, somebody could work 12 hours, and really there's not going to be a big difference in the output and in the rewards that those people respectively get. And so when you work a 9 to 5, your material compensation is bounded by what the company is willing to give you. And furthermore, the one thing you can change and dial in how much work you're doing and how much effort you're putting in really does not directly correlate to the quality of your compensation and your rewards. And so I find that troublesome. But additionally, one thing I find troublesome as well is that generally the amount of time you have to dedicate, and specifically the interval of time you have to dedicate to working a traditional white-collar 9 to 5 job, is the prime hours of the day when most things are happening. So if you have dreams or ambitions or you have something you want to do, whether it's a business or anything, your most active hours when you could be and should be working on that are going to be occupied by the 9 to 5, which is expressly in the way of you pursuing that other thing that you're interested in. And so your options are to pursue it on the weekends or pursue it after hours, early in the morning or late at night. And really, the 9 to 5 becomes a giant blocking factor in you being able to earnestly and seriously pursue these dreams and these ambitions you have. And I think for a lot of people as well, they're mentally and physically exhausted after working, minimum 8 hours, oftentimes much more than that. And so it just becomes too much to go from working so hard at your job and then trying to keep working on some sort of side hustle or business or ambition. And what happens, I feel like, is with a lot of these people, they become comfortably numb to their environment at work, and they allow their dreams and their ambitions and the things that they really want to do to just gently fade into the background, and they stop pursuing them because the inertia to get those things done is just so great, and the thing that's creating that tremendous level of inertia is their job itself. And so I'm the sort of person where I've always envisioned mentally, ever since I was extremely young, I've envisioned that I would live the sort of life where I would be successful, not even really just in a materialistic sense, but successful in that when I'm waking up in the morning, I'm waking up with the intention of working on something that I care about and something that I really, feel stimulated and fulfilled by. And mentally, as a child and really as a young adult as well, I always thought, I'm going to find a way to escape the 9 to 5. It's not going to happen to me. I have this scenario drawn out in my head where this is how my life is going to be like. But increasingly, as the time approaches for me to exit education and enter the real world, I'm confronted by the fact that unless I take substantial and drastic changes, my trajectory is to land in a 9 to 5, where my dreams and my ambitions and everything that it is that I really do want to do is going to be greatly inhibited. And ultimately, what I'm scared of is that I will become one of those people where I become comfortably numb and I allow those dreams and ambitions to slowly fizzle out as, it just becomes too tedious to put in the effort needed to actualize those things. And that's just so incredibly bleak and dismal to me, and I just refuse to have that happen to myself. I have such a great I have such a great interest in doing these things, and I value so much the freedom of being able to work on something that I genuinely care about, that the idea of having that slowly subsumed by a 9 to 5 job that just what's the phrase I'm looking for? That just slowly overpowers and swallows those things is terrifying to me. And I that's really my greatest fear in the moment. And so I made the resolution to myself a couple of weeks ago when I did some serious soul searching and was really having serious thoughts about, what is my future going to look like. I made the resolution to myself that I'm going to do everything in my power to become self-employed within this next year. That's my promise to myself, is I'm going to do absolutely everything in my power to become self-employed. And like I said, I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm not afraid of a lot of work, because as long as that work is in service of an end which benefits me, I'm willing to go all in. And I have a history and a precedent set in my life of doing that. So that is my goal. And I want to talk about two people, influential people in my life, that helped me really come to this realization and make the decision that I need to make a drastic change, because nothing changes if nothing changes. So there's two people. There's my father and my uncle. So I'll start with my father. My father is probably, and I feel like a lot of people say this, but this is legitimately true in my case, he's the hardest working person I know. It's genuinely unbelievable how hard he works. And I always knew that he didn't come from a super affluent background, but he had 6 siblings, right? Is a big Catholic family, and I knew that he didn't come from a lot of wealth on account of the fact that he had so many siblings and his parents finances were spread so thin. But I did not really appreciate how far he came until I went back to his home state with him, and we drove by his childhood home, and I saw this extremely tiny 2-story house where he lived with his parents and their pets and his 6 siblings. And he showed me, pointed to the window where he would sleep 2 or 3 to the room with his brothers. And in that moment, I was really struck by, wow, my dad had to work so hard to go from that starting point to where he is now, because he's done quite well for himself on account of him working unbelievably hard. And he's been able to provide a great life for me, for which I'm eternally grateful, especially after seeing, his humble beginnings. But the thing with my father is that he got to where he is because he worked ridiculously hard. He will tell you himself he didn't have any great natural aptitude. He didn't have any lucky breaks. He just had to work a tremendous amount to get to where he is. And I find that commendable. But, when I see him get home late, having to skip dinner, and then immediately opening up his laptop to do more work, I think about, that could very easily become me. And in fact, that might be what I become if I don't take the changes, or if I don't take the steps to implement the changes and alter the trajectory of my life. And, I have tremendous respect for my father, but I feel like it would almost be a disservice to him. Maybe he wouldn't think this, but this is how I think about it. It'd be a disservice to him for him to work as hard as he has to provide such a great life for me, and then for me to let my dreams slowly be cast away in favor of what's the phrase I'm looking for? In favor of the consistency and just the general safety of having a 9-to-5. I think that's really a sad way. That would be a sad way for me to go out, because my father worked so hard to give me so many great opportunities, and for me to have dreams that I do want to pursue and allow those to slowly die seems like just such a tragedy. The second person I want to talk about is my uncle. So I'm in California right now. My uncle lives in Los Angeles. I'm currently living in Los Angeles. And so I get to see him much more than I ever have at any other point in my life. And so my uncle has had a very unconventional life. He went to an Ivy League school. He was an incredibly smart person, but some number of years ago, probably 30 years ago, he moved out to LA and started his own business. So he has taken the entrepreneurial route, and he's not wildly successful materially. He's able to, subsist his lifestyle in his rent-controlled apartment. But the core thing that I see with him is that because he runs his own business and because he's doing his own venture, it gives him freedom in the middle of the day. He gets to do stuff. He gets to go play tennis. He gets to go do all sorts of things that actually interest him. He gets to write. He has artistic, outputs. He likes to write and paint, and he's able to do all of these things because he has the freedom, both, in time and monetarily, that was afforded to him by starting a business and being employed by himself. He could definitely be making more money if he was working at a 9-to-5 right now. Like I said, he's not very materially successful, but to me, he's the prime example of what success is as far as how I'm defining it for my life, because he is able to pursue the things that interest him. He's able to follow his dreams, and he's supporting himself. And so everything he does is on his own time. It's in service of him and his goals. And when I contrast the sort of life that he's living to the life that my father is living right now, I have tremendous respect for both of them. But as far as the direction that I want my life to go in, I'd much rather be living the sort of life that my uncle is living in, even if it is materially unsuccessful. I'd rather be less successful, but still have my dreams intact and still have the freedom to pursue them, than be more successful and have them be dead in the ground. And so obviously it would always be nice if I'm able to follow my dreams and actually make a lot of money doing it. But to me, that's secondary to the freedom of just having the chance to make something happen. And that's the promise I made to myself, is I'm going to do everything in my power to be self-employed and to keep those dreams and that hope and that opportunity alive. Because if that's dead, I don't know what I'm going to do. It would be intolerable.